holy enormous windscreen Batman! Hello there, Dark Knights, and welcome back to Build with the Boys. Builds the Batmobile Tumbler. We've rather excitingly received our next 2 issues through the post. We have got issue 3, which we're building now, which is the windscreen. They call it it's got a very, very long name. I'll tell you what they're actually calling it. It's the windscreen. For all intents and purposes, that's what it is. They're calling it the front panel of the passenger compartment with windows and wipers. Windscreen's catcher, isn't it? There's not tons to do in this. This is all push to fit. There's no screws to do. So we are going to put this one together. What else we got with this one as well is we got our first free gift. We got this key ring. It ain't great. This feels really, really cheap. I'm not even joking. I thought it was plastic at first because it feels really light. It feels really flimsy. It's all right. And I'll tell you what, I guarantee it. If you have signed up to the trial of the Batman figure, if you're thinking, what Batman figure? Go check out my other video, I talk about it, but I'll also put a link in this description so you can go sign up to the trial of the Batman figure. If you sign up to it, they typically send you a free gift for signing up to the trial. I bet you they send you one of these. I've got another one of these coming. Because it's Valentine's month on the channel, not only are we doing the build, we're doing our Batman talk at the end, and we are going back to Arkham. We're going to be talking about a villain in particular, who is one of the tragic love stories of the DC universe, and particularly Batman's story. But before we get to that, we're going to build our windscreen. So let's get it open, let's get into this, let's get this done. Okay, so here are the parts we get inside stage 3. Let's take these out. This is going to be our main windscreen. This is metal. We've got 2 windows, and we have 2 windscreen wipers. I don't know why the windscreen wipers bother me. There's something a bit weird about having windscreen wipers on a Batmobile. Don't know why. I mean, it's practical and it makes sense to have them, but I don't know, just feels a little bit odd. So this is quite simple. As I said, there is not a lot to do in this. We're going to flip this one over. We're going to place this window in. We don't need to glue this, which is a beautiful thing, because I really don't want to cover this in glue. And these are going to pop over these lugs here, and it should just hold in place. I would imagine there's going to be elements later on that are going to push this anyway. Oh, that's going nowhere. That's well locked. So that's that one done. We're going to take our second window. I'm going to place that over there like so. Let's get that nicely pressed in. Not happy with that one. There we go. That's that one in. That's those 2 in. Now we flip this one around. And that's how we're looking. Really nice. Now there has been a lot of debate about were the windows black or were the windows gold. The windows were black. I appreciate that's going to make loads of people angry. They go, you're wrong! I'm not wrong. They're black. The reason why they're black and not gold is because the images you've seen of a Batmobile with gold windows are studio lights bouncing off the windows, creating a reflection. That is what's happening there. The windows are black, they are not gold. The reason why the windows are black is because it's a bloody Batmobile. And guess what colour Batmobiles are? They're black. So we do have 2 windscreen wipers to place on this one and this one. I'm trying to figure out which is left and which is right. I would imagine I've got this right the first time. I'm trying to see exactly where the indication bar is, but my ancient eyes, even with my glasses, aren't picking it up. So let's pop my woman repellers on and see if we can spot exactly where. There we go. So inside the windscreen wiper just here, you can see that one's an R. That's our right. So we know where our left and rights are going. So we got right on the right hand side, left on the left hand side. So this is right here. So right is going to go on this side. So we're going to pop this one in here, like so. It's just a bit weird, Batmobile having windscreen wipers. I don't know. It seems a bit, I don't know. It's like you don't associate them having like a screen wash function. It just seems a little odd. But no, I mean, I suppose it makes sense, you know. You could just disable a Batmobile by throwing an egg at it otherwise. And then we have that one there. So I don't know exactly where the windscreen wiper's supposed to. I'm keeping them there, so I'm happy with my windscreen wipers. I don't want them so prominent on the front of the Batmobile. But that is all there is to do in stage 3, and we are done. Criminally short. It's got an air of Iron Man about it, this one, but it does look sexy. Look at that. Just come on. It looks like the cowl. It looks like the bat mask is what that looks like. Gorgeous thing. Look at the reflection coming off it. Look, those black windows almost look gold with that reflected off it. Isn't that weird? You'd almost start arguing they were gold and not black. Thus I digress. Let's have a chat. It's a really short one, number 3. Really short. Let's hope there's not many of those. But it's a necessary. And I know why they did. Look, those windows look gold. Isn't that weird, man? Those windows looking gold when the light's hitting them. But they're not. They're black. But that's where we are. I'm sorry. I'm fishing. But they're black. It's the Batmobile. They're black. Really short one, and has got an air of Iron Man about it. Just clip these 4 pieces in, you're done. But there is a reason for that. This is part of the original trial where they did 4 parts. Now, I don't think we're going to be attaching that to anything for a really long time. I expect that's going in a box for ages. They do these parts in trials to give you something a little meaty, a little sexy to get your kind of teeth into, big parts. And then we start switching to things like engine and things like that. Because if the first 4 parts they gave you were, carburetor, gearbox, fan, clutch pedal, you probably would be like, actually, I don't mind this. But if they give you a big sexy piece, you're kind of in. I mean, it's like even with Iron Man over there. The first part they gave you was his head. You didn't attach his head to his body for 2 years. But the first part you built was his head. And it's like, even with the Disney Doll's House, the very first thing we built were the front doors. It's the last thing you put on the model. So it's like 2.5 years before you touch those doors again. That's why they do this. So they give you these big chunky parts to sort of give you a taste of the model. And then we start moving over to the actual build. Now, it looks like that's going to happen sooner than I thought, because in issue 3, we are going to be building a suspension arm for the wheels. So it looks like we're actually going to start building the vehicle at that point, which will be good. If you just stick around for the instructions, thank you for stopping by. If you haven't yet, please remember to like and subscribe. It helps us massively, and we appreciate your support. If you're sticking around for our bat chat, Tales of the Dark Knight, we're talking about one of the love stories of the Batman universe, the nicest love story, but tragic love story of the Batman universe. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, he's talking about these 2. Nope. I'm not talking about those 2. No, I'm not talking about those 2 for 2 reasons. One, because I think most people know the story of those 2, or think they do. 2, the other reason I'm not is because there was this big thing when Suicide Squad came out. A lot of people discovered the character of Harley Quinn for the first time, and they think that's Harley Quinn. And it's like, no, that's that one movie's version of Harley Quinn. The actual character is nothing like that. So when the memes started appearing of, I want a relationship like this, and it was pictures of Harley Quinn and the Joker hugging, a lot of us have been reading comments for years just kind of smirked. Because if you want a relationship like Harley Quinn and Joker, you can definitely get that. You can definitely find a man that will treat you terribly, abuse you horribly, and hate you, because that's exactly what Joker does. Joker and Harley Quinn are not this big love story of the DC universe. They are not. Harley Quinn is a victim of the Joker. He doesn't love her. He doesn't like her. He doesn't care about her. She went missing for a year, and when she turned back up, expected him to miss her, he hadn't even realised she'd gone. He hates her. They are not this big love story. They're just not. However, there is a big love story in DC, and that's who we're going to be talking about, and it is these 2. So that is Mr. Freeze and his wife, Nora. So Mr. Freeze is a complicated one because a lot of the Batman villains have got 2, 3, and in some instances 4 origin stories. And there is a reason for that. If you are new to this side of Batman, if your only knowledge of Batman is the movies, you will be slightly confused by this. With the comics, DC have done wipes, resets a couple of times. And the biggest one they did was in 1985. They did a thing, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's too much for me to explain, but they decided that the comics have been running for about 40 years at that point, and to find out who a character was, you'd have to go back 20 years to find out who that is. It's easy now, you got the internet, but back then, you had no chance. So they did a reset, they did an entire wipe of everything. They worked into a story where all these different sort of continuities became one, and it changed a lot of the characters' backstories. So originally, Mr. Freeze was never called Mr. Freeze, he was called Mr. Zero. He had a very different story to what he's got now. So Mr. Zero was just kind of a hokey character that wanted to make a freeze gun, that's what it was. And it was more innocent times when they were doing that. He wasn't known as Mr. Freeze, he was Mr. Zero, and he was Mr. Zero for the longest time. He first was referred to as Mr. Freeze in the 66 Batman show. So in Batman 66, they used the character, but they didn't want to call him Mr. Zero, they called him Mr. Freeze. He wasn't named as Mr. Freeze in the comics until Crisis on Infinite Earth, when he just became Mr. Freeze. They're like, well, he's Mr. Freeze. Everyone knows it was Mr. Freeze. He's Mr. Freeze. And they changed his name, they changed his backstory, they changed everything. So he became known as the character. The most known iteration of the character is a doctor called Victor Freeze. And he's working on cryogenics. And one thing goes wrong. There's an explosion, and his wife Nora is killed in the explosion. But it damages Freeze as well. So Freeze takes a lot of chemical hit, and he has to wear the suit to keep his temperature below freezing. It affects him badly, and he refuses to acknowledge that Nora has died. So he still speaks to Nora. He speaks to Nora all the time, and whenever you see Freeze do his things where he's turned something into his kind of ice layer, they're always ice sculptures of Nora. He loves her. He never stopped loving her. And what happened to her has angered him so much, he's become what he's become. And he has spent a lot of his time trying to bring Nora back to life. So a lot of the time it's sort of seen that she's ill and that he's got her frozen and he's trying to cure an illness. That isn't it, she's dead. But she is frozen on a block of ice. And he is trying to resuscitate her. So it does make him one of the more tragic characters of the Batman universe, because, I mean, typically a lot of them are nasty because they're nasty. In Batman, definitely. A lot of them are just kind of horrible characters, or they're nuts, or they're... Whereas Freeze is just a tormented soul. This version definitely freezes a tormented soul. And it's a very sad character. He just wants his wife to live. So he does anything he can to make it happen. Mr. Freeze has also got something else going for him. He is the first super-powered villain of the DC universe. So before this, every villain in the DC universe typically don't have superpowers. There's always been this big thing about why Batman's so good is because he doesn't have superpowers himself. Neither do his villains. But no one ever points that out. So they'll always say, yeah, but he doesn't have any powers at all. He's just nails. I'm like, yeah, but neither do his villains. He's not fighting supervillains. Joker has no superpowers. He's just a guy. Riddler has no superpowers. He's just a guy. The Penguin is just a guy. Catwoman is just a chick. So his villains don't have superpowers either. But they started to introduce that. So now they do. I mean, now there are plenty of superpowered DC villains, but Mr. Freeze was the first one to have this kind of power of being impervious to cold. He was the first one, and he's the first one that Batman fights, and certainly in the continuity of the everything that happened after Crisis, he is the first superpowered villain that Batman fights. It's a hell of a story. Freeze, I don't think, for me personally, has ever had the sort of quintessential Freeze story. There are definitely Mr. Freeze books out there that are worth your time, but he tends to be a sub-character. He tends to appear in other people's stuff, because I think you are quite limited with the character of Mr. Freeze and what you can do, because a lot of the Batman villains, a lot of the Batman stories, you don't know which villain it is, and then it gets revealed which villain's been doing it. I mean, some of them are obvious, like with the Riddler, but other times you're like, oh, it's Two-Face, but you're 3 issues in when you find that out. And that happens quite a lot, but with Freeze, you know it's Freeze, because there's ice everywhere, so it's always, well, it's Freeze. But he is a fun character, and he does have this very tragic arc where all he really wants is his wife. He just wants to be with his wife because he loves her. And Valentine's month on the channel, we're all about love. He has been portrayed on film numerous times. He was in the TV show 3 times, played by 3 different actors in the 66 show. And they just kept changing the character. So when he first appears, he had hair, and the way it worked was he just was a guy, and they used lights. So they had like a blue light shining on him that kept him cold. It was like his cold ray. Then they made him look more like what we know him as, where he had the bald head and he had the German accent. But again, he wasn't Victor Fries at any point in that. The name escapes me. It was a German name, and he spoke with a thick German accent, and he was Mr. Fries, if you use Adam West's way of pronouncing it, Mr. Freeze. And then we didn't see him again. We didn't see him again on film for a long time, and he was always one of the characters that you think were going to make it to the movies. And then we didn't see him again, but then we saw him big time in 1997's absolute disaster piece, which is Batman and Robin, where he was played by, at the time, one of the biggest stars in the world, and he was played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he looked like this. So now, knowing what we know about that movie, this is just seen as hokey, but I can remember the images of that first came out, and people were like, oh, this looks awesome. When people first saw the images of Arnie just in the makeup, they were like, oh, I'm in. He looks good. He shaved his head. He looks good. And then when they saw that him in the suit, it was like, this will be good. And everyone had high hopes for Batman and Robin. They did. An hell of a cast. And this was a coup. Getting Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the villain was massive, because Arnie hadn't played a villain since Terminator. So he played arguably one of the greatest villains on camera, the Terminator, and then just played good guys for the next 10 years. And what 10 years? I mean, that 10 years that Arnie had, it's unheard of. From 1984 right through to 1996, before this one came out, he just hit after hit after hit. I mean, he did Total Recall, Predator, Raw Deal, Commando, The Terminator, The Running Man, Eraser, Last Action Hero, Terminator 2, True Lies, just bam, 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 hit after hit after hit after hit. They just kept coming. So he was a huge star when they got him, but his star was slightly on the wane. Eraser hadn't done the business they wanted it to do in 1996, and it was almost as if Arnie thought, I need something. And Batman was going to be it, because at that time, Batman was a surefire hit. So you look at it, and on paper, this just makes sense. You're like, right, so Batman always makes money. Arnie always makes money. Let's put them together, make a boatload of money. That didn't really pan out, did it? Because it's bloody awful. I mean, it is an awful movie. We're going to talk about that later on in the build, but it's pretty bad. I mean, a freeze is coming. It's you're not taking me to the cooler. It's bad. It's bad. So it was a shame that that's been his big screen outing. And then with the kind of hyper real Nolan movies, and also the latest, the Batman, I think it's unlikely you're going to see a Mr. Freeze in a movie anytime soon, unless they do something very clever with the character, because there is this, we need it grittier, darker, more realistic. Okay, that's what they do with Batman. Grittier, darker, darker, darker. You make Batman any darker, it'll just be a black screen. But this is what they do. So I don't think we're going to see Mr. Freeze on screen anytime soon, unless he appears in a Suicide Squad or something like that. And who knows with what they've got planned for the DC universe, maybe you will see him. But he's a fun character, and again, it is at its heart a sweet story. He just wants to be with his wife, and he just wants her back. But that is all for this one. So that is the end of our Dark Knight tale for this week. We will be back very soon with part 4, which we're putting together, and we will also be talking about Batmobiles in that one. So we're going to talk about the history of Batmobiles as well, and we are going to start with not the first one, right? Because there's this whole thing, well, the first one is the 66 Batmobile. No, it isn't, but that is the one we're going to be talking about. But we will also talk about the first 2 Batmobiles, which were not that one. Tune in for that one. If you haven't yet, please remember to like and subscribe in a world where you can be anything at all, just be nice. And remember, Gotham needs you.